My name is David. I'm just an ordinary security guard, and I'm already 60 years old. I decided to share my story because, throughout my whole life, there was only one day when I truly felt afraid. It happened on a Wednesday. I had the day off, but my supervisor called and told me another company's warehouse needed a guard. Their regular guy had gotten sick, and they offered me a chance to cover for just one night. I agreed. I didn't have any extra money at the time, and it seemed like a good opportunity to earn a little extra cash. That evening, I packed my things and headed to the warehouse, which was located on the outskirts of our small town. When I arrived, the supervisor walked me through the job and gave me a floor plan of the building. He showed me to the security office and explained that I needed to do 3 rounds of the building during the night. There were also 5 surveillance cameras I could monitor. He said the work was no different from my usual job. The only difference was the building itself. At 9 p.m., my shift officially started. I was completely alone. First, I decided to check out my workspace. There was a TV, but it was broken. On the desk, there was a walkie-talkie for communicating with guards stationed at other warehouses. There was also a jar of instant coffee. Apparently, the guard I was filling in for really loved his hot drinks. The warehouse itself was mostly empty, just lots of open space, probably because it wasn't actively used for operations anymore, and only stored old goods. The only entertainment I had was an old radio. But I'm not a big fan of music or sports broadcasts, so I just pulled out a book I had brought with me and finally decided to finish it. My shift had begun, and I had 10 long hours ahead of me, all alone. 2 hours later, the alarm on my phone went off. Time for my first round. I put my book down, grabbed my flashlight, and got up from my chair. Is someone trying to reach me? I decided to take the radio with me, just in case. The warehouse grounds were pretty big, but eerily empty. I headed first toward the farthest exit. I've never been afraid of the dark. The flashlight was enough to do my job. I reached the exit door, opened it, and stepped outside to check the perimeter. Everything seemed fine. I walked a bit farther toward the fence. Then the radio crackled again. Damn it. The door slammed shut. I rushed back to it, but it wouldn't open. Stupid draft. I lit a cigarette and made my way toward the next entrance. I figured I'd finish checking the entire outside perimeter before going in through the main door. About 10 minutes later, the exterior check was done. I went back inside and started inspecting the other rooms. That's when I heard something. A noise. I couldn't tell exactly where it was coming from. The building was big, with lots of doors and long hallways. I decided to keep moving, hoping to hear the sound again so I could figure out where it came from. Actually, no, if I'm being honest. I was hoping it wouldn't happen again, and I could just go back to reading. I walked down a long hallway, checking closed doors as I went. Everything looked normal, so I headed back to my room. I wanted to make some tea, but there was nothing except that disgusting instant coffee. I hate coffee. I opened my book again, and then the radio crackled. Someone was definitely trying to say something, but I couldn't make out a single word. Too much interference. I decided to keep reading, but then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something on the monitor. Movement. What was that? I tried to zoom in, and it looked like a person? Maybe a woman? Hard to tell. It was really dark on that camera. Just a dim LED strip lighting up part of the hallway. I didn't have much of a choice. I had to check it out. I left the room and headed to the part of the building where that camera was. When I got there, I shined my flashlight down the hallway from a distance. No one. Great. I'd have to do a full sweep again. As I walked the corridor, I noticed one door. It was slightly open. All the doors were supposed to be locked. I opened it and stepped inside. Oh God. What the hell is that smell? It was horrible, like a rotting watermelon or something worse. The stench of spoiled food and trash. I swept the flashlight around. The room was a mess. Junk everywhere. Piles of garbage. Then my flashlight flickered and died, of course. I'd forgotten to change the batteries, and that's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, just in time to see the door slam shut. I ran to it and started pounding. Whoever did that, you need to open this door right now. This is private property under surveillance. You're trespassing. Open the door, now. I kept repeating myself, but the door stayed shut. I didn't have a phone with me, so I tried using my radio. But then I heard my own voice, coming from behind me. There was a second radio in the room. What the hell? I muttered. That's when I felt it. Someone was in the room with me. I was absolutely sure someone was standing nearby. I stood frozen by the door. It was so dark I couldn't even see the darkness itself. Then, I heard footsteps and the rustling of trash on the floor. My heart nearly stopped. I think I forgot how to breathe. I whispered, "Who's there?" I began slamming against the door, trying to break it open. What the hell is going on? My brain stopped thinking rationally. For the first time in my life, the darkness started conjuring terrifying images in my head. The singing stopped, and then, sudden pain. I woke up in the morning. The door was open. There was no one inside, just me, with a bleeding head. Soon, the supervisor arrived. I told him everything that happened. We tried to check the security footage to figure out who had been in the warehouse, but it turned out the hard drive was damaged. The cameras only displayed live footage. They weren't recording. Then came a long investigation involving the sick guard. Eventually, I went back to my regular job, and no one told me anything else. I never found out who that woman was, but now I know. Always change the batteries in your flashlight before a night shift. Hello, my name is John, and I've been working in a hospice for 20 years. I'm a night security guard, and I've seen a lot of terrible things, heard a lot of screaming, and witnessed death. Horrible death. There were times I had to help the nurses hold down patients so they could give them injections. Over the years, I became less emotional. I started to accept that death is just death. You could say I grew numb to it. But one night, everything changed. That was the most terrifying night of my life. And after it, I started fearing death again. It was 2 a.m., and my shift was going as usual. I was watching a baseball game while reading the newspaper. Outside, it was the year 2006. A foggy night, thick and heavy. The kind of night where something bad just feels bound to happen. But I didn't care. I came to work only thinking about getting through the shift and going home. At around 10 p.m., I was sitting in my chair when a nurse came up and asked for help. I followed her to the second floor and immediately heard screaming. It was awful. An elderly man was thrashing around in agony. There were several patients in the room. His name was Carl, and he had blood cancer. The nurse tried to insert a catheter, but Carl was moving too much from the pain. I helped her strap down his arms, and she was able to hook him up to an IV with painkillers. The man was in terrible shape, but he eventually fell asleep. I went back to my post, and about an hour later, the nurse returned to tell me Carl's heart had stopped. They had already taken him to the morgue. I felt sorry for Carl. I'd played chess with him a couple of times, and he used to share candy with me. But to me, it was just another death. I didn't feel much. And that's when I realized how far gone I was, that someone dying didn't mean anything to me anymore. Now I understand that's not right. No one should think like that. I went back to watching the baseball game. 3 hours flew by, and night had fully set in. Most of the lights in the building were off, with only dim emergency lighting in the halls. I had to use the bathroom, so I went up to the second floor, where the nicer restroom was. But that night, it was closed. So I went down to the first floor and headed to the other side of the building. There was another restroom there, older and more run down. I finished up and went to wash my hands. While I was at the sink, I heard footsteps. Someone had walked past and was heading toward the stairs that led back up to the second floor. That was strange. Nurses stay on the second floor and almost never come down during the night. I dried my hands and stepped out to see who it was. I opened the door and looked ahead. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, an emotional jolt, a real shock to the system. It looked like Carl, walking up the stairs. For a second I froze. It was like something switched on inside me. I slowly walked toward the staircase, hoping I was just tired or overworked. Maybe I hadn't slept enough. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. I'm not a religious man, but please, let it not be Carl. I walked up the stairs, and there was no one there. I approached the duty nurse and asked her, "Did you see Carl?" She looked at me strangely. "Carl passed away tonight. I saw him earlier in the evening, last time." I told her I thought I just saw him going upstairs. "That's impossible," she said. "You're just sleep deprived. You should get some rest." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just exhausted. I went back downstairs to my post, but I couldn't shake it. Something about what I saw wouldn't leave me alone. So I went back upstairs and entered the room where Carl had stayed. His bed was empty. His belongings were still there, but something was off. His bag, it was unzipped. "He was here," came a voice. One of the patients had spoken. "He's not done here yet," the patient added. "That's why he hasn't left." I had no idea what was going on. Was I dreaming? Was this a horror movie? I asked the man what he meant. Who was he talking about? But he turned away and wouldn't say another word. I walked out and headed back downstairs. The halls were dark, and I was determined to find out what was going on. I made my way to the morgue. The door was slightly ajar. Chills ran down my spine. Cold sweat broke out on my back. My whole body tensed. I stepped inside. There were 2 bodies in the room. One table covered with a white sheet. But Carl wasn't there. Was he alive? Had he come back? What the hell was going on? I rushed out and told the nurse that Carl's body was missing. She didn't believe me until she saw it herself. The shock on her face told me everything. Either Carl had never actually died, or he came back to life. It was starting to feel more like a dark comedy than real life. We searched the entire building. Nothing. Nowhere. Then I checked the locked bathroom upstairs. There, sitting on the floor by the wall, was Carl. I approached him and realized he was dead. "Oh, you poor guy," I said softly, filled with sorrow. "You scared the hell out of me." It seemed Carl hadn't actually died when they thought. I'd heard of people waking up in morgues. He must have held on with everything he had. Maybe he just wanted to wash his face with cold water, but didn't have the strength to do it. And in that moment, something returned to me, the sense of how precious life is. Through sheer will, Carl had taught me something. Not on purpose, but he taught it all the same. I went to his funeral. I said goodbye, properly this time. For the first time in years, I felt real sorrow over someone's death, and I understood once again what it means to be alive. Hello, my name is Harry, and I work as a security guard. Though this story isn't really about my job, it's only indirectly connected to the events I'm about to share. I work at a shopping mall. Every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, I go in for my shift. I always walk there, leaving my house around 7 p.m. and arriving about 40 minutes later. My shift ends at 7 in the morning, and I head home to sleep. That's been my routine for the past 5 years. But one day, something happened. As usual, I woke up in the evening, had some breakfast, and headed out along the same route I always took. I live in the suburbs and always pass by this one abandoned house. It was still in decent shape, but no one had lived there for years. The lawn was overgrown and littered with trash, and I had never once seen any lights on inside. But that day, I immediately noticed something strange. There was light coming from one of the windows. It felt odd, out of place. Maybe the owners had come back, or someone new had bought the place. I didn't know, and frankly, it wasn't any of my business. I got to work and eventually forgot about the house. But the next morning, on my way home, I started wondering who might be living there. I hoped I'd see the owner outside, maybe cleaning up the lawn or washing the windows and garage. But no one was there. Oh well, maybe next time. A day passed, and it was time for another shift. I don't know why, but I couldn't get that house out of my head. I was dying to know who lived there now. I left home a little earlier than usual and headed to work. As I passed the house, I hoped to see that window lit up again, but it was dark. I figured the owner had left again, but curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to get closer and peek inside. I know, it's weird and wrong, but the curiosity was eating me alive, like a little kid who just had to know. I walked up slowly and looked through the window. Inside it was filthy, almost no furniture, dust everywhere. How could anyone live like this? I figured I was wrong. Maybe the owner just stopped by to check on the place. I turned around, ready to leave, when I heard a noise. Something dropped, or I don't even know. Maybe just rats scurrying around for food. Then I heard it again, a loud thud. I suddenly felt like someone was inside, and I quickly walked away. But that only made my curiosity worse. All I could think about during my shift was getting back to that weird house. In the morning, the streets were empty. I walked back to the house and looked through the same window. No sound, no light, nothing. I turned around again and accidentally stepped on a piece of broken glass lying on the ground. That's when I heard the sound of a metal chain. I stopped and listened, but heard nothing else. All right, time to go home. I didn't think much of that sound, and that was my biggest mistake. 2 days later, I was heading to work again and saw light in the window. I stopped and watched from a distance. I could have sworn I saw someone moving inside. It was a man. At one point, he walked up to the window and looked straight at me. His expression was anything but friendly. His face was thin, with a messy beard and scrapes all over. He stared straight into my eyes, then suddenly turned off the light. I never saw him again. The whole thing left me uneasy. That house started to feel more and more disturbing every time I walked by. The next morning, I passed it again, but I didn't even want to look anymore. Except, this morning was different. There was still no one on the street. But I heard something. A scream. A woman's scream coming from inside the house. This isn't my business, I told myself, but my curiosity got the best of me again. I walked up to the window. I couldn't see anything, but I could clearly hear a woman crying, then a loud crash. What the hell is going on in there? I knew this wasn't normal. I should have called the police, but I didn't want to wait. I'm a security guard, damn it. So I broke in. I knew I was breaking the law, but I couldn't just walk away. The screams got louder as I entered, but the house was empty. It was clear no one had lived here in a long time. I couldn't figure out where the sounds were coming from. I checked every room, and then I saw the stairs leading to the basement. I knew someone was behind that door, but I didn't know if they had a weapon. The crying continued. I had no choice. I kicked the door down with 2 strong blows and stepped inside. It was pitch black. Only a little light came through a small window. And oh God, there she was, a woman, chained to the wall. She was bruised and filthy, with a metal chain wrapped around her. There was no one else in the house, but the basement window was open. I immediately called 911. Cops and medics arrived, helped free her. She was too weak to speak. I told them everything I'd seen over the past 2 weeks. Someone had been keeping her down there like a dog on a leash. She lived there, ate, slept, went to the bathroom. I couldn't believe it. It was horrifying, and thank God I showed up in time. I don't know what happened after that. Did they catch the guy? Who was that woman? No one told me anything. They said to stay out of it. And the most important part, they told me never to go near that house again. Why?